Hi, and welcome to Girl Bye, the podcast where we bring the queer conversation to the so called norm. Today, our special guest comes from the mountains in North Carolina and brings us love from around the world. We welcome Ethan. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. Doing good. How are you doing?
Doing great. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, where you grew up, a little bit of your backstory and kind of how we got here.
Yeah, so I'm from the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. So I'll go ahead and say first off, that's how you know someone's local if they pronounce it the Appalachian Mountains. It's not Appalachian Mountains like you see on television, everything. Like, well, we'll pick up real quick who's the locals and who's not, but just yeah, we get a huge kick out of it. But yeah, I'm from the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. I'm from a small town near Asheville, North Carolina. That's usually what I tell people to kind of keep the conversation short and sweet. But for the sake of this podcast, I'm actually from Burnsville, North Carolina. It's a very, very small town on the outskirts of Asheville. But I currently reside in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, yes, I did go from the mountains to the city. I'm here in Charlotte. My hobbies are I'm a very nature person, coming from the mountains and all that. So, you can always
Definitely.
find me in a nature trail, going on a hike or anything, or I'm either doing that or just chilling at home with my miniature schnauzer Enzo. Um, Total foodie, so I love going out trying new restaurants and all that. And I've actually stepped into my fashionista era, so I'm huge on fashion right now.
Ooh, not the fashions.
Oh, girl, let me tell you. For the first time, I went to, okay, it wasn't my first time going there, but it was my first time actually shopping there. I went to South Park Mall and I bought my first like name brand outfit. I went to this brunch in Texas this past weekend. Oh my God. I was so excited about it. I'm like, oh my God, just being around all this fashion and everything. Oh girl, I was in fashion heaven. Just all the colors and everything
South Park Mall will clear out your bank account.
in a heartbeat. That's why the first time I went there, I had to have a conversation with myself and be like, listen, girl, you are strictly window shopping. You're not trying anything on. You are just looking. You can touch, but that's it.
Yeah,
Because
South
you're
Park
right.
Mall. For those of you on the podcast not from North Carolina listening in, South Park Mall is what we call the rich mall in Charlotte. It's the place to go if you want to go walk around Louis Vuitton on a
Yeah,
good day. But definitely a beautiful place to go. Um, so obviously, this podcast is talking about the queer community and bringing different conversations to the forefront. So where do you land in the queer community?
so I identify as a gay male. My pronouns are he, him. I will respond to they, them. I also respond to queer because I do have a more androgynous sort of identity. So I can be very masculine one day. It just really depends on how I feel that day. I can be very masculine. I can be very feminine. I can just kind of be somewhere in the middle. So yeah, either gay or queer.
A lot of us growing up, you grow up in this time frame where like you were not ready to even say anything about being gay. So you kind of like go through stages until you find the place where you feel most at home. And I think that's amazing as we continue to evolve in our conversations. It helps us all find those places of comfort. And I think that's the most important thing for everybody in the community is finding that place of comfort where you feel the most authentically you.
100%.
Yeah. So your story, because now you live in Charlotte from being out in the boonies, as I like to call it, because it's all the way out there.
You're
Uh,
not wrong.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey, kind of what was your hometown like? to kind of getting to Charlotte, and where in that time did you kind of like, when did you kind of start figuring out that you were in the queer community, and kind of how did that lead to your transition, your plan to move out of there, or did it have nothing to do with moving out of there?
So it's definitely quite a story. So I will start off with I knew that I liked boys since the second grade. I didn't know that I was gay, like, because, growing up, we didn't use the word gay. Like, we just didn't talk about it. Like, it didn't exist in our household. That's just not something you talked about back then in the 90s,
Mhm.
given my age here. but but I knew the attraction was there. I didn't know it was just solely to guys because because of the social norms, I would still think that girls were cute because that's what I was taught to think. Like, oh yeah, girls are cute, whatever. But I didn't know how to differentiate. Like, oh, she's cute because I think she's pretty and everything. And then there's the romantic attraction. I didn't understand the differences between that. I just knew that boys think girls are pretty and girls think boys are handsome and whatnot, and went on from there. But yeah, since the second grade, I knew I was attracted to boys. But the funny thing about that though is I can't explain it, but I always knew that I could never say that I thought that boy was cute.
Right.
I don't know where that came from. I don't, but just something internally told me, don't ever say, don't ever say that. It's not safe to say that. You can talk about girls are cute all day long, but don't ever tell anybody that you think this boy is cute or whatever. And just kind of give a little bit of context of my background. I was raised just like anybody else here in the South in a very religious family. I was raised Baptist, and pretty much my family basically ran the church. So my uncle was the pastor of the church. I've had people in my family who filled different positions in the church, from deacons to choir leaders to Sunday school teachers, including my dad. And yeah, my family was just scattered throughout the church as far as like holding positions and everything. So definitely know the good book as well. So
So being young and in the religious world, and a lot of people will hear me throughout the podcast kind of bring up religion because I think it's really important, kind of
yeah.
just as a whole. Because when I was growing up, I mean, we were religious, we're Catholic, we're Hispanic. I think a lot of Hispanics are Catholic, and being in that realm, I think sometimes you see what's going on, and you're not sure kind of how to navigate in that path. And so
Hmm.
for me, we went to church, we did a lot of different things as we were growing up with the church. And so not hating on the church, I think during that time frame it was very different than it is today, and I think it will be in the future.
Hmm.
But how do
Yeah,
you think, do you think that's going to church and like seeing what was happening there kind of influenced that feeling? Or do you think that was, you had that feeling before you even kind of went to church or any of that?
absolutely. Because I was raised in church. Like I've been in church since my mother had conceived me. So I church was all I knew growing up. So being in raised in the small town that I was in, the only thing I knew was church, family, and the small community I was raised in. Those three things, that was my life right there. And then once I graduated, then work became the other thing. That was the only thing I knew. So it was just those four things that I knew growing up in that small town. But yeah, religion definitely had a huge part in the secrecy of my identity, not just how I identify in the LGBTQ plus community, but also just who I am as a person. And that's
Yeah.
actually something I actually realized through therapy in my late 20s, early 30s, being raised in the church. That definitely had some influence with the secrecy of being gay.
Right. And so when did you decide um that you wanted to leave that town and move to a new town?
So for my whole life, I wanted to get out. It was a classic story. Like you'll see similar stories like this in movies where it's just like the little hometown where somebody's wanting to always just break out. It's either you either
Yeah,
want to get out or it's just somewhere you just die there or whatever. And that's what a lot of people talk about. Oh, I can't wait to get out of this town. There's actually one person, just a little tangent. I was on my lunch break at my first job and I was going to the gas station just to get a snack or whatever. And I was talking to the cashier. We were talking about this girl who moved to Florida. And she said, yeah, she actually moved back. And I was like, what? She came back? Why
crazy.
would anybody come back? And she's like, it was just home. And I'm like, well, not knocking it. If this is where you're happy, then by all means, but I sure
Right.
wasn't.
Yeah,
So
you were giving the kid drawing the big cities in your notebook of where you wanted to live.
exactly. I was Oh my, I laugh thinking about it now. You know, the typical like emo teenager where you're just riding down the highway and you're just looking out the rainy window, just staring at the airplanes, just dreaming of flying away or so. I was very much that emo
Not
kid.
not Kelly Clarkson over here.
Very much so. Oh my God. I had that song on repeat, girl.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, a lot of people did, trying to break out of these tiny little towns. So
Right.
what age did you officially leave that town? And kind of piggybacking off of that, what was your plan? Like, is it grab the last 20 bucks and move out, or did you have like a real, thought out structure to kind of what was next?
It was kind of structured and it was kind of winging it because what got me out was just took me by surprise. So originally, I I moved out and I moved into my uncle's trailer at the time. So my family, we all just lived right there. And so I just moved like a mile up the road from my parents. So I just rented a trailer from my uncle. So that was my first time moving out, being on my own. That lasted for about a year, year and a half or so. And so what I would do while I was trying to figure out my own identity and everything is I would secretly be on these apps. And this is before we had all the apps we have today.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this is really telling my age. Back whenever we had plenty of fish and those were the main things. And
What
there
was it?
was,
Adam for Adam? I think that's what it was.
yeah, it was those two things. Seems like there was another one I can't remember, but it
There
was
was
mainly those
another one. I'm
three.
trying to remember. I
Oh
think it
my
was like for
gosh.
iPhone users only or something like that. I don't remember.
It might have been, but
Yeah. Was this a time frame where it was still like okay to use Backpage for Craigslist?
very much so. Like we're going way back, honey. We're going to what Gen Z would consider the Stone Age.
Oh man.
So I would go on there and I would have these conversations with guys, just to have someone in the community to talk to.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like late at night, whenever I know everyone's asleep, no one can look up because I was all the way on top of the hill where everybody could just look up and see what I'm doing. And, good old Southern families, everybody's knows you want to know what you're doing, where you're going. So I would wait till everybody was asleep. And then I would just go out and go meet these guys, have conversations and go meet up with them, whatever. And then there was one person that I met who actually ended up being my first boyfriend. And this was at the age of 21. And I had always told myself that once I was fully familiar with what gay was, coming out, and all that stuff,
Hmm.
I always told myself I will never come out unless I have a reason to. In other words, if
Yeah.
we get to a relationship or something. That's that's just how I thought back then.
Yeah.
because I knew that even though I was the good Christian boy who did everything that should have been done, like I did everything. I was at church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, every time we had revival camp meetings, which were like week-long services and stuff, always there. Play the piano at church, take up offering, like you name it, I was involved. I didn't drink, I didn't cuss, and
Right.
I was a good old Christian boy growing up. And it amazes me to see the evolution of myself from then and now. But anyways, I knew that this one secret would negate everything that I had done as the good old Christian boy. So I always told myself, you can't come out unless you have, unless you get into a relationship. It just didn't seem worth it to me at the time. And so I met this person on Plenty of Fish. We hit it off, and there's just something about him. I don't know what it was, but um, I just wanted to keep being around him. I enjoyed his company.
Yeah.
And so once we decided to get into a relationship, that was whenever I made the decision. I'm like, okay, I I need to come out now. And so before my official coming out, there was actually something else that happened before then. Let me backtrack it a little bit. So I had already come out to a couple people in my family
Hmm.
only because I was basically forced to. Someone I was talking to in my hometown who knew someone in my family kept encouraging me and pushing me like, you need to come out to them. Like they were in community college with one of my siblings. They're like, they're just great and everything. They'll totally understand. You need to come out to them. I'm like, you need to shut the hell up because you don't know them. What you know is what we allow the public to see. You
Right.
don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Not saying my family's bad people, but that's just generally what people do. We let people see the surface level in public, but you don't know what goes on behind closed doors in any
Yeah.
family.
I mean, if you look at any kind of, you know, famous family that all of a sudden you see some crazy stuff happening on the news or whatever, and people are like so shocked that, you never know like what's truly happening on the backside. And it is hard to kind of explain that to people that interact with people on that forefront because they never really understand it because they're not on the other side of that person.
Exactly. And in that same breath, since we're in this age of social media, people think that they know a person based off what they see on social media. Let me tell you, especially as someone who is involved in social media, you see what we allow you to see.
Right.
You you see the 2% out of the 98% of what's going on in our lives. So just keep that in mind whenever you think you really know somebody or their
Right.
family or their life. But anyways, there's this one guy, he threatened to out me. I'm like, I'm gonna tell everybody. And like he just went on a outing rampage and
Wow.
he was ready to out me. And I was working third shift at the time and I was on my way to work. And like I'm having full on panic attack, like sick to my stomach, and I'm like, my world's just coming apart. Like I'm going down this rabbit hole of worst case scenario because that was the one secret that would completely change everything.
Right.
And so I just pulled. I was almost to work, and then I pulled over on the side of the road, just freaking bawling my face off. And I called my oldest brother, who has always been like my best friend growing up. We're still like this, and he was the person that I felt safest to come out to first. And so I called him and I was like, listen, we need to have a conversation. I need to tell you something. And at that time, I was still trying to figure out my identity. So originally, I came out as bisexual because, I felt like that would be easier. And it's like, oh, okay, well, at least he still likes girls or whatever. So there's still some hope for him.
Yeah.
So
The
I came out to my
story
brother,
of almost every gay man's life.
right? So I came out to my brother and The only reason he got mad at me, and I figured this was going to be the turnout with him. The only reason he got mad at me is because he asked me multiple times growing up, "Are you gay?" And I would lie to him and I would tell him no every time. I was like, "Listen, I know we have a close bond. I know we're good friends as brothers and everything, but I was just so scared it would change our relationship." And
Right.
he's like, "No, I will always love you. I will always be your brother. Nothing will ever change with us."
That's kind of like the thing is like if you can't admit it to yourself, I feel like other people want you to tell them when they ask you originally, but you're still trying to like tell yourself. And I think you can't tell somebody else something that you don't know yourself and like own yourself. And I think that's where
Yeah.
people have to like also keep that in mind that like in that transition phase of understanding who you are and becoming your true authentic self, really that's kind of like that turning point where you're admitting to yourself who you truly are. And I think before that, you can't really tell someone else because you're still trying to buy into your own feelings.
Yeah, you're still processing it.
Yeah. And when you like from going to now telling somebody, right, what did that do for like your own personal self-esteem and like how did that make you feel like expressing even though you're not expressing your full self at that current moment, but how does that make you kind of feel in the long run?
Coming out.
Yeah, I mean like coming out is bi first and then kind of what do you think that does for that first phase in coming out?
Hmm. I haven't really thought about that. I guess it was a whirlwind of emotions.
Yeah.
I would say there was a little bit of relief especially whenever my brother said, "I'll always love you." But in that moment, it was still filled with uncertainty, fear, no regret. I can definitely say that for sure. No regret, but a lot of fear and uncertainty because I still had more people to come out to, well, pretty much the rest of my family.
Right.
But there was still a sense of relief, knowing I had at least one person in my corner.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so after I had the conversation with him, I then just called out of work, turned around, and went back to my parents' house. My dad was a supervisor on second shift, so he was still gone. It was late at night, so he hadn't come home yet. So I went and had a conversation with my mother, and I basically came out as bisexual to her. And mind you, I had never been in a relationship or anything. I had never kissed a girl. I've been on a few dates, but I'd never done anything.
Yeah.
And so when I came out as bisexual to mom, her original thought was, poor Ethan, he's so lonely, he thinks he's bi. And right,
Just haven't met the right girl.
oh my God, the number of times I've heard that, even after coming out as gay,
Yeah.
Lord. Um, but yeah, so then I came out to her, and then I finally just packed all my stuff and I just moved in with my first boyfriend because I'm like, I know it's not safe for me to stay here. I need to move out. I need to go. So within like the first month of talking to this said boyfriend, I move in with him.
Wow. Pack the U-Haul, baby.
Yes, I don't recommend this form of dating, like moving this fast. But again, this is my first ever relationship. Like I'm just running and gunning it, just learning as I go.
Right.
But so moved in with him, and then long story short, the rest of the family finds out. And of course, it was not taken so well.
Yeah.
But later, I started to go, once I got out of that environment, I started to have the opportunity to learn what was outside of Burnsville, what was outside of church, outside of religion, outside of family, outside of just working in a factory, and getting to see what other people thought about the community.
Hmm.
and actually how open everybody really is. Because in my mind, because I was raised in fear, I thought that everybody would condemn it. And even someone in my family, they told me, they were like, you realize that whenever you go out there, everyone's going to be like, there's a queer. So before we reclaimed queer as actually a derogative term,
Hmm.
but thankfully we reclaimed it and took it as our own. And so I was afraid of that. I was going to see that all the time. But thankfully, that was my first step in claiming myself
Yeah,
because my response was, I don't care. This is me. If they don't like it, they can go.
right. And I think that
So,
that's something good that you brought up is, for me, even personally, reclaiming the word queer was really hard. I think when
mhm,
you're not that much older than me, but I think when we think about, the different groups or the different generations of growing up and kind of the evolution of being gay and what that means or being a part of the community as a whole. I think when I was growing up, being queer was a really bad thing. And then I think
mhm.
now the Gen Zs have really learned to take ownership in some of those things and just decide we're not going to talk like that anymore. We're going to use these things to help lift us up and help talk about a community as a whole. And I think, even now starting the podcast and using the word queer and trying to use that word more continuously in my language, starting out was really, really hard. It was
Mhm.
definitely an adventure to where we are today. And I think
Yeah.
now, even thinking back on like some of the conversations, were there people in your life that you kind of set those boundaries as to like, are you going to communicate with them or cut them off or any of that type of stuff? And is it based off of the way that they talk to you? Is it based off of specific things that they've done? Kind of what helped you kind of build those boundaries with people?
So, honestly, like boundaries wasn't something I started learning until um, my late 20s. And I'm 32, in case I didn't say that earlier. But um, yeah, in my late 20s, that's whenever I really started being more aware and educated around boundaries.
Yeah,
I was starting to enforce boundaries a little bit before knowing about it. But for me, it's always been how you treat me, how you talk to me. That's going to determine whether you stay in my life or not, and also how you treat others and how you uh, talk to others and everything. So, whenever I came out, for example, um, there was that mourning stage of mourning the loss of my family because it was like, it's rejection and it's like I just
yeah,
don't feel safe anymore. So there was that mourning period of mourning the life that I once knew. And now trying to put the pieces back together and just figure out like, okay, well, what does my life look like now?
right.
And after that mourning period, and I had healed from that and everything, I started realizing like, oh shit, nah, I'm good. Y'all stay over there. Like y'all toxic as hell. So
Yeah,
I cut out like 90% of my family. Like, don't get me wrong, they're all great people. They'll all give you the shirt off their backs and everything. But there's a lot of them that'll talk shit about you behind your back too. Like just traditional Southern
yeah,
people. It's
yeah.
like, we'll do anything for you. We'll give you the world, but at the same time, we're also going to talk some smack too. And
We're also going to
boundaries,
drag you.
exactly. And like they don't, boundaries aren't even, the word boundaries isn't even in their dictionary. Like,
Yeah,
because they came from a generation where it's just like they didn't know about that kind of stuff.
right. And I like to ask that question because like for me personally, boundaries when it comes to friends, family, like all those types of things, I think you don't have to be fully well versed in what it is to be queer to be respectful.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think with that, I'm the person where respect is not given just because you are an older person or just because everybody says we should give this specific person respect. I think when
Absolutely.
you get respect because you've earned the respect. And
Hmm.
so I like to kind of bring that up because a lot of the time I think being any form of queer, you kind of either have to figure that out the hard way or you're kind of teetering on a boundary of do I want this relationship with this person? So let me just do how they want me to react. And I think when you do that, you're kind of like bringing yourself down and like hurting your own self esteem. Do you feel like that's something that you encountered in any point in your life?
Well, like the lack of acknowledging my boundaries.
Like the being trying to fit into a mold for someone else and
Okay.
then
Oh yeah.
realizing like later on like this is not I shouldn't have to change myself to be a part of your life. We can kind of coexist or we don't have to and that's okay too.
Oh, absolutely. Because like the first 21 years of my life, being in the closet, it was just 21 years of living a facade of just being someone that I'm not, because having to live a certain way also kept me from being able to getting to know myself. So I'm like, okay, this is what fits in.
Yeah.
This is what is approved. So I'll just keep acting like this. And then once I broke away from that, I started unlearning that bit by bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually recently that I started to learn more about it. And one person that I'm very fascinated by is a shame and vulnerability researcher. Her name is Brene Brown. Love her work. But I was watching a short clip of hers on YouTube, and she said that they were looking for her team and her, they were looking for the opposite of fitting, I'm sorry, the opposite of belonging. And she said, we were amazed by the result that the opposite of belonging was fitting in. Because whenever you're trying to
Really?
fit in, yes, I was like, please say more.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
whenever she wanted to talk about it, she's like fitting in. When we're trying to fit in, we are modifying ourselves. We are trying to analyze and see, okay, what is acceptable in this group of friends
Mm-hmm.
or with this group of coworkers. And okay, I know this is acceptable, this is not. So I will just change this about myself so I can fit in, so I can have a sense of belonging. But it's not really belonging. You're just
Fitting in.
modifying yourself to try to fit in.
Yeah.
Whereas belonging is whenever you are being your most true, authentic self and just letting your whole light shine. And whenever you're being yourself, that's when you truly belong. So, like our friendship, like this is where we truly belong in our friendship because
Yeah.
we fully respect each other. We vibe and everything. So we're good. So this is like a sense of belonging. I don't have to edit myself. You don't have to edit yourself. We completely and fully accept each other as who we are.
Yeah. And I think that's hard, right? I think especially for the young listeners, the thing that I harp on pretty consistently with my friends and everyone is like friendship, I feel should be easy in a sense of
Yes,
you should be able to always be yourself and not feel like creating the friendship is a job. I think like with all of my
exactly.
friends, sometimes I talk to them every single day. Sometimes I talk to them months in apart. Sometimes I talk to them at different times. I think a lot of the time you have to kind of figure out that boundary of where do I want to put enough effort for us to be friends and make it work, but I shouldn't
Yeah,
feel like it's a full-time job trying to be someone's
exactly.
friend.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
and I
one of
think
the
that
most
kind
beautiful,
of blends into a lot of that stuff. Coworkers, all of that stuff. I think,
yeah,
you know, coworkers are a little different because I think some coworkers want to be your friend because they work with you, and then the moment you no longer work with them, they're gone. Um,
exactly.
but
Yeah,
I think
happens all
that's a
the time.
phase, right? You got to learn how to, talk shit by the coffee pot and then get rid of them later. Um, So kind of going into that transition of work, um, work now, I know probably work back in the day was very different, but once you came out, once you have now been living your true authentic self, do you tell people at work? Do you not tell people at work? Is it something that you hide, don't hide? What's that about?
So the way I do this is because I'm all about living your most authentic and real self.
Yeah,
At the same time, it's like I don't just go out there and advertise like, "Hi, I'm Ethan. I'm gay. Nice to meet you." Like I don't go like that. So it's
yeah,
like being gay is not like my identity. It's not who I am. It's a part of me, but it's not who I am. But
okay,
what I used to do is when I first came out, I was very secretive about it. I would have like, a very select few coworkers like, okay, you're cool. I trust you. You're not going to
yeah,
stab me in the back. You're not going to go talk shit. So I'll tell this one and that one. And the rest, like, I'll let them think whatever.
right,
Now I'm in the phase of like, if you ask me, I'm going to tell you. Like if we in conversation and we're just talking about relationships, like if you're telling me about like your girlfriend or your exes or whatever, I'm going to talk about my experiences too. And then
right,
just kind of come up and just I let it come up naturally is how I
yeah.
do it.
So I asked this question because I find it funny how different people react to like work related situations. Um,
Hmm.
I've always been very open at work. When I did used to work in an office, I always had a photo of my significant other on the desk, just like everybody else does. I think I always kind of talked in different conversations with different people where if they, asked me anything or whatever, I was always very open. But again, I wasn't like walking in the room like, hi, I'm gay. I feel like
Exactly.
we don't expect the straight people to walk in and be like, hi, I'm straight. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
I always felt like that path was like, it wasn't something I would hide, but it's also like I'm not walking in like with a banner. Like,
Right. Well, and the other thing with that too is like I feel like especially back in the day, like in the early 2000s,
yeah,
people already had a misconception or a stereotype of what gay looked like. So
yeah,
I wanted to show them before I told them who I was, like, this is what it really looks like. It's not
yeah,
linear. It doesn't look the same on everybody.
correct.
Like some people are more loud and proud and effeminate about it, or not effeminate, what's the word? Flamboyant about it. And
Hmm.
some are just more reserved. That's just their personality. It doesn't look the same on everybody. It's like that one meme that you keep seeing all over social media. It's like, really, you don't look gay? Oh, hold up, let me go get my rainbow jumpsuit. Is that gay now?
Yeah,
But yeah, I was just wanting them to kind of get to know me first, and then when we have conversations, and I would mention anything as far as like relationships or whatever, and then it would come up and like, wait, you're gay? Like, yeah. And then that's whenever all the questions would come in, like, yeah, that's a stereotype. That's a stereotype. No, that's not true. Like, and just kind of educate them, like, what it really meant to be gay or queer.
yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is I think what became mainstream gay
Yes.
versus what truly is gay. I think like we all kind of know everybody on in that is queer, that is labeled as queer, we have different looks, different personalities, different things, just like everybody who's straight is a little bit different. I find it funny that a lot of people will talk about gay being a specific type of way, but then you look at like these uh heterosexual males that have their nails done, their eyebrows done, they get a haircut and everything every single day. They're like fresh cut, fresh everything. And then you have the male that's like the one that's not so clean and cut and ready to go. And I like it is the
Hmm.
same spectrum when you're thinking about people who are queer. Like everybody has their own way to express themselves in the way that they like most.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now where we are in life, I think being in our 30s, because 30 is around the corner for me, I'm finally catching up to you. Um,
Oh, girl, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. It's
I'm ready for
amazing.
my 30s. 30s is the next chapter. I think 30s is the new 20s.
Uh, Well, exactly. And here's the thing. Let me just go ahead and put this out there. Like, I don't know why the gays call it the gay death, turning 30. Like, honey, for me, it was not the gay death. It was like a gay rebirth. Like, that's whenever I really started stepping into myself and owning my power.
When you get to your 30s, I think the thing about our 30s that people don't really realize is that the 20s is no longer what they really were. I mean, I think a lot of people are no longer having kids in their 20s. A lot of people are
Hmm.
not trying to like do anything crazy in their 20s. They're trying to live, get to know themselves, figure out themselves. So I think when you turn 30, like even me right now getting ready to be 30, I I know a lot more about who I am as a person, what I'm willing
Hmm.
to give and take. And I think when you get to that point in life, your day to day and your next steps are so different. And
They
like
are.
everything you do is so different. And like we don't need to be at everything. We need to be at the things that we find most important and are going to add to us as individuals. And I think you don't really learn that until you go through your 20s and figure out like, oh my God, I showed up to every party from 17 to 22. And then I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm not showing up to this party anymore. The people here do not align with where I want to go. And this party needs to be different. So I think, it helps us kind of really open up our minds to those different pieces. So now where you are, um, what is your current relationship with family, friends? Kind of how do you now with where you are now, moving forward, kind of evolve and grow? And what boundaries do you think that you have in place that really like set the tone for how you're going to move forward?
Okay. So for me, my boundaries are around respect, communication, but also like people who I allow into my inner circle, because we all have our different circles of friends, like the friends that are out there, the friends that are in our inner circle. But to be in my inner circle, I don't want you to be the friend that tells me what I want to hear. I want you to be the friend that's going to call me out of my shit.
Yeah,
I want you to be a friend who's able to give me the tough love whenever I need it. I want you to be the friend that pushes me. And this is my expectation, vice versa for my friends to give to them as well.
right,
I want you to push me. I want you to challenge me. I want you to help me grow because just because I've grown a lot from the early 20s, Ethan, to being where I'm at now doesn't mean I'm done growing by any means.
yeah,
I have a vision of where I want my life to go because now I know what's possible. Whenever where I'm at now, I thought was impossible whenever I was in my early 20s. And like,
right.
I'm here now and I thought that this was impossible. So those are some of my boundaries as far as, yeah, those are some of my boundaries. Communication, uh, helping, pushing each other thrive and not being stagnant.
Right.
Um, as far as like friends and everything. But with my family, that one's interesting. So there's a few people in my family that I still talk to,
Hmm.
and but I still have to take them in doses. It's like
Yeah.
that's where I have a firm boundary. It's like there's some people that in my family that are the most that I love the most out of anybody in this world. Like there's no one I love more than certain people in my family. But at the same time, I can only handle them in doses.
Right.
Just because you can't talk to them every day does not mean that you don't love them. It just means that you have to sometimes limit access. That's part of boundaries and practicing mental health because there's some people in my family that should be people that I can go to and talk to about everyday life, and they're not. There are people that are just going to go into a complaining cycle, and that's not very congruent with my growth.
Right.
So I know that there's certain seasons where I can talk to them, and it's just like we can talk about everyday life or whatever. But those are some of my boundaries with like friends and family and things of that nature. Yeah.
That's awesome. it's really good to hear the refreshingness of like knowing where you stand and knowing like what you want to see personally going forward. I think it's really good to like set that and set that tone because then you're really able to, I won't say cut people off, but like put people in their place as far as what you're willing to accept and not accept for your own mental health and your own personal growth. I think that's like a lot of people don't realize how important it is for your own growth before
Hmm.
you think about other people's growth and where other people are going. I think you have to be willing to like decompress yourself and understand yourself and put yourself first before you can really help work with someone else and help somebody else grow and build.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, especially with boundaries, is like I have a deep compassion for people who still don't understand how boundaries work. Like, for example, one of my siblings, um, she was trying to talk about something, and I told them, no, this is not up for discussion. I know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, like it's a boundary of mine. And then about a week later, they try to bring up something else, not the exact same topic, but something in the realm of it.
Close enough.
Exactly. And so the only thing I responded with was boundaries. And they were like, well, these are awfully, how was it they said it? Like, well, trying to paraphrase, they're like, well, these are awfully
Yeah.
like uh, firm boundaries or whatever. And I'm like, or why do boundaries have to be so difficult with siblings?
Yeah.
And I tell them like, it's not difficult if you're able to respect it. And it's like,
Right.
because I have compassion for them, because I'm like, I know how we were raised. And I know that we weren't taught boundaries because my parents weren't taught boundaries and their ancestors before them. It was just, you talked anyway, like, especially here in the South, it was very cut, dry, straight to the point.
Yeah. That's the evolution of time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now I want to dive in to a little bit of overall dating. I know we talked a little bit earlier about kind of the older app world to the newer app
Mhm.
world. What is dating like? What is your top two things you're looking for in your forever situation, if you're looking for a forever situation? Um, and along those same lines, lived in the Asheville area. When you lived out there, I'm pretty sure that a lot of those people were on the DL and quiet and not wanting to say anything. As were you in that time
Mhm.
frame. But let's talk a little bit about that kind of where you were, kind of how that has changed or not changed. I know, like in my opinion, I think wherever you are in the world, there is 50% of the people on the app that are DL, but
Mhm.
if not more. But kind of what has your experience been like, and do you think apps are helpful, not helpful, that kind of thing?
So I think anything really has its pros and cons, whether
Right.
it be social media or the apps or whatever. One thing I've learned through time is, in my own personal experience, is that the apps are what you make them out to be. Like, take them with a grain of salt. Don't take
Right.
them so serious because let me tell you, back in the day, that used to make or break my day sometimes. Like, if like I would have rejection or just like people would just be complete, they were just assholes or whatever. And it's just like it would just like bring me down. It would just ruin my day. And then I was just like, oh, men are just assholes. I just go on that whole rant and everything. But then you just start to learn over time that it's it's just something not to take seriously. It's a whole different world, especially on Grinder. Oh my God, it's a whole different beast in and of itself. Girl, like
Yeah.
just go on there and don't take people seriously. Like if you're on there just to hook up, then just go have some fun. And if you're there for dating, good luck to you. May the odds be ever in your favor. But I mean, it truly is what you make it out to be. But as far as my evolution in dating and everything, I, girl, I've come a long ways, even with just my evolution last year
Yeah.
with how I perceive things. So, and it's amazing to me how I'll see some of the same people on these apps that I saw in my early 20s. And I'm like, I used to be interested in you. Oh, girl.
You're like, ooh, those
Not
days
the
were rough.
right. And it's just like, oh, girl, we were a little bit desperate back then, weren't we?
I remember going back to where I went to high school when I
Mhm.
was very single and opening up Grinder and seeing people with photos from when we were in high school. And
Yes.
I thought the gaggery that you have a photo where I know you took this photo. I was there, like I was at this event, and you're taking these photos and putting them on Grinder. And that was 10 years ago, ma'am. Take
Right.
that off because
Oh my God.
nobody
Yes.
believes that that's
Please,
you.
please update your profile picture. Oh my God.
Yes.
Please update your profile picture because I'm telling you, I have kicked people out. I'm like, if you are catfishing me, you're getting kicked out. Like, no. Or if I show up to the date and you don't match what I saw, date's already over before it even started.
And I think that that's the biggest thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is like, if I know the truth from the beginning, I'm going to be more willing to give you an opportunity than like if you show up and you're like, that's not you.
Exactly. And the other thing too is like giving people opportunities and whatever. It's like, you know, yes, take the absolute grain of salt. But for me, my biggest thing is like, look, we're all here for the same thing, whether it is for a hookup or a dating, we're here to connect with somebody else.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a hookup, don't waste somebody's time. Be clear and open with your communication. Because that's the thing is that we came from a generation where we didn't know how to communicate. And if we
Yeah.
just were not interested in somebody, it's either an instant block or just ignore them, ghost them on to the next. And it's like, listen, we are all grown adults here. Okay. So be open in your communication. Like I'm a big boy. I can handle it. If you tell me I'm not interested, I'm like, okay, bye. On to the next one.
Right.
Instead of wasting someone's time and leave them on thinking that they're going to be there in 5 minutes or whatever, and you're just standing there waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's like, this dude coming or what?
Yeah.
So,
Or, block them. Like, I feel like the thing that for me personally, even when I was on the apps, like if you're not like open enough with yourself to just tell somebody
mhm.
you're not interested in them, then just block them. Like you can easily block them on the app, you can delete the profile, there's so much you can do to just stop communication with that person, other than ghosting or leading them on. Like I feel like if you block them because you're not like socially good enough to just tell somebody you're not interested, you could just block them and you could just get rid of them as well. I feel like it at least gives somebody like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to talk to that person anymore.
And don't take it personally if you do get
Get
blocked.
blocked.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. You're going to let somebody you literally do not even know bring you down. Like, girl, come on.
Yeah. And I think that that's the thing, right? It's like these
Mhm.
apps, you're not you're not out here trying to solve world hunger on these apps. So like you got to be able to go in and look at what you want to look for, do whatever, but like you can't allow it to affect the day to day. It's got to be,
No,
yeah, it's a game
like
at the end of the day, right?
you're not trying to solve world hunger, you're trying to solve a different hunger. So let's be clear on that.
Very true. What about your dating life in real life? Do you still meet people in real life? Do you, I know that sometimes you're a little bit shy. So have you come
Mhm.
further from that, or are you still just just as shy?
There's still a lot of shyness with me. So I identify as someone who is ambivert. And for those of you that don't know, an ambivert is someone who has both the qualities of an introvert and and a extrovert. I used to be hardcore introvert, but moving to Charlotte, it's kind of helped me get out of my bubble and open up more and have a more bubbly personality and whatnot. But there's still a lot of that shy reservedness, especially like whenever I first meet you, we're still kind of getting a feel for each other. But after we get through the initial meetup, I definitely start to open up and let more of myself kind of come out.
Yeah.
Um,
So do you interact with people in real life? Like meet somebody at a
yeah.
bar, talk to them, get to know them, ask them questions.
So yes and no. So for myself personally, one place I don't go to meet people is at the bar or at the clubs or whatever. Not
Yeah.
saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just not for me personally, especially since I'm a person who is sober and just
Yeah.
it doesn't add value to me. It's not something that brings me joy. So my kind of person is not going to be hanging out at the bar. Not saying we
Right.
can't go there every now and then, but I just don't expect to find my kind of person hanging out there.
Right.
Um, so, usually like I'll just get on stuff like Hinge that's more dating oriented. I still will meet people, go out for dates or whatever. Actually, had a date last night that went
Mhm.
pretty good. Just met for some Japanese and just had some conversations and everything. So I am still open to like, going out and meeting people and
Yeah.
everything. Um, but
That's
also
awesome.
it
And I
kind of,
know, like, I've seen your growth in some of your shyness over the time that I've known you, also, especially by me throwing you into like my parties and lunches and stuff where I'm like, go talk to strangers, have fun. And I think that
uh-huh.
that's something for a lot of people to remember is like it is good to build your friend group and have somebody that's going to put you, I wouldn't say in uncomfortable situations because I don't think I've ever put you in an uncomfortable situation, but put you in a place where you can push your own self a little bit and get to that point where you're like talking to people you don't know, but you have a connection through someone else can help kind of build some of that boundary pushing where you'll be able to get a little bit less shy in that initial conversation.
Yeah, being the friend to help push me out of my comfort zone. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's definitely happened at some of your parties. But I'm also, so this is the way that I think is I know some of the things that I need to work on, and the way I've overcome some of the things is just like, okay, girl, just do it. Like I
Yeah.
just put myself out there. It's just like learning to swim. It's either sink or swim.
Yeah.
And it starts to sink a little bit. It's okay. You've got the floaties. You can come back later.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so like whenever at your parties, I just make myself like you want to be more social. You want to learn how to be more social, talk to other people, build more relationships, go out there and do it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing too, is like make sure that like, for everybody listening, when you do go to like try, if you're a shy person and you're trying to go out, make sure that like you're going to places where you feel safe, right? Like I think
Absolutely.
you coming to my party, everybody there is going to treat you a certain type of way because
Yeah,
I'm not going to let them hang out with me if they're not a certain type of person. So I think like making sure that
exactly.
you're going to the right places because you don't want to go to a place where maybe some of the people invited are not really the nicest people and that can really like hurt that growth as
Yeah,
well. So that's
absolutely.
huge.
Yeah, we're not trying to create more trauma for you to go to therapy over.
Yeah, we don't want more trauma, we want less trauma, right?
Oh God.
um so what do you think is something you would tell your younger self, or you think that young people now learning who they are, trying to figure out the path, trying to figure out what's next, what do you think like is something that you think that they should know?
Stop living for others and start living for yourself.
Ooh,
Absolutely.
that's a heavy one.
Because, okay, I'm kind of going to go on a little bit of a tangent with this one. So, and this is speaking from experience.
Yeah,
It is very easy to get into that internal war of, like, say, because, used to I did go to the clubs and everything. It's very easy to go to some of these bars where you're looking for the masculine leather daddy type or the cute young preppy twink or who's dressing in like these modern preppy clothes or whatever. Just imagine whatever your type is.
yeah,
And we already have an idea of, like, for example, like the leather daddy types. I'm like, okay, they're going to usually be more into the more masculine, like the mask for mask sort of attraction. And so used to, I would be in this internal war of like, okay, if I want to meet somebody, I need to present myself this way. I need to dress this way. And actually, I had someone who used to be a friend of mine. He actually told me I had dressed a certain way and we were going to nothing crazy, but I actually had just put like a statement necklace on. That's all it was. The rest was like masculine presenting clothes. I just put a necklace on. And he's like, "You're wearing that?" I'm like, "Yeah." And we are going to go to a more masculine bar. And he was like, "I'm just concerned that we won't have a lot of guys come up to us if you wear that." And
wow,
at the time, I was more of a pushover then. So I was like, okay, so I just took it off and then just we went to a bar, whatever. But it's so easy to fall in that trap to have that perception of I need to present myself a certain way to get the person that I want when no, you're getting the person you think you want, but you're not getting the person you want. Put that article of clothing on, put that jewelry on, put that makeup on, put whatever on, whether it's more masculine, more feminine, non-binary, whatever the hell. Just be yourself because when you're not yourself, you're attracting the people that are not for you and later will build a resentment towards because you can't be open and honest with them and vulnerable and authentic. But whenever you're being your most true self and you're living for yourself, whenever you have those strong boundaries in place, that's whenever you bring your people in. That's
yeah.
whenever you find your real friend group. That's when you find your ride or die friends, your inner circle friends, whenever you meet that significant other. So stop worrying about pleasing other people and just start living life for yourself.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think one thing that I've learned in my personal life is, and most of my friends know this, is I have a ridiculous addiction to bags, crossbodies, fanny
Yeah.
bags, purses. I don't care if it's cute and it holds enough stuff, it can
Right.
get me through the day. And so, I know that like I was in a relationship for a long time where they did not want me to carry bags when we went to certain places or do certain things. And so as I became to understand more about myself, and obviously, you take the blinders away of lust and you start really learning a
Hmm.
lot about the relationship and you move on
That
from
part.
there. I think the thing that I learned the most is like the next time around, I'm not going to allow these things to happen because these are things that bring me joy. And I think
Yes.
when you start giving up things that give you joy for something that you think is giving you joy, that's where you learn where the boundary is because you're going to, at some point, the lust for that situation will end. And I think that,
Yeah.
you gotta, it's hard to know the difference between the lust of the moment and the
Hmm.
long-term goal. But I think you learn so much from the moment where the lust dies and the
Hmm.
situation continues, kind of how you want to navigate moving forward. And I think it's really good to be very truthful to yourself as soon as possible.
absolutely. And first of all, I didn't even know that you had a relationship like that, but I had something similar. So my first relationship, of course, I very really presented myself. I didn't know I was doing this, but apparently I presented myself very butch or masculine or whatever, because butch can get up while in the closet. And then after coming out and everything, whenever I would come home from work, I was apparently starting to be more effeminate or letting that feminine side out more. And I didn't see it, I didn't realize it, but he would complain to me all the time, like, why are you acting more feminine? Like, this is not the person that I wanted, or whatever. This isn't the person that I was dating or went on those dates with, or whatever. And I said something like, as far as I know, I'm still like masculine or whatever. And like, whenever I'm at work, people still can't believe that I'm gay because I was still working at the same factory at that time whenever I had come out. And he told me, and he was like, well, the person that you are when you're at work, I need you to bring him home. Yes. So
What?
you, yes.
And that's the
So you,
moment you pack your shit.
that should have been the moment. Like I said, huge pushover back then.
Yeah,
But yeah, you start to see whenever those moments are just the lustful moments, because I was in
yeah,
lust of having somebody else, because that's whenever I thought at the time that that's what life was just being in a relationship with somebody when it is far from that.
right.
But whenever you're starting to be more true and authentic to yourself, it's the most beautiful thing, because you were talking about like having a love for bags and everything, which by the way, girl, I'm obsessed with that multicolored chain handled bag you've got. Oh my gosh, it is so cute. But
The Pride one, the rainbow
yes,
one,
I had one. Yes.
Rainbow
But
Collection, Coach. I think that was
yes, that one.
2022. No, 2023.
Oh
Rainbow
my God.
Pride Collection, Coach 2023. Coach, if you want to sponsor, let me know.
I have um I have an obsession with heels. Like, I freaking love my heels. And it can be anywhere from like a chunky heel, 2-inch platform, or it can be like the 6, 8-inch heel, whatever, like the stilettos. And
Yeah,
I remember my first pair that I had bought, I was in Vegas with some friends, and it was a red snake print, a nylon stiletto.
yes.
I was with some of my friends and some other women that were passing me. One woman says something like, "Oh, bless you, child. I could not do that." And then another one walked by me and she was like, "Honey, is that not hurting you?" Mind you, I walked around in Vegas for 5 hours with those heels on. And I told her, I was like, "Honey, when you have a love for heels like me, like, the pain's non existent.
You
Like,
don't
I
feel
just,
it.
no, it brings me so much joy. It's telling a story." And to that, I want to add to it is that if you are either talking to someone or in a relationship, even with somebody, and they are trying to omit those parts of you in your story, girl, it is time to say the end on that story with them and just kick them out with those fierce heels or sneakers, whatever you like to wear. And
Right.
it's let them go, because that is not something we compromise on. Yes, there's compromise in a relationship, but whenever you have to compromise things that bring you joy, that's crossing the line.
Yeah. One thing that he told me that was really, really funny is that we can negotiate a lot. We can negotiate whether the toilet paper goes over the top or around the back. We can negotiate whether the cups go into the cabinet to the left or the cabinet to the right. What we will not negotiate is what makes me happy and what I'm willing to do for myself to bring joy. And what we will not negotiate is how I feel like dressing is how I feel like dressing. And I think
Absolutely.
when I first heard him say that, it was shocking to me the way he expressed it because to me, it's so true. I'm willing to negotiate a lot of things. We can part,
Hmm.
we can switch sides on the bed, we can anything you want to do. I'm fine with until we get to the point of you trying to change me personally. I think that's
Yeah.
where that line has to be drawn on my expression of who I am and what I want to be. versus your expression of how you see me.
Absolutely. And it's like another thing Brene Brown says, like, you'll see me reference her a lot in my content. But um, one thing she was talking about, because she also speaks on stages as well, and will go to like corporate meetings for innovation, creativity, and all that to help teams. But she was talking this clip and she said, I can negotiate a contract with you and I can negotiate a schedule with you. But what I cannot negotiate is how I present myself. Because once I start negotiating myself, I then betray myself.
So good. It's so good to remember like you've got to put yourself first. I think like
Absolutely.
got to put yourself
Yeah.
first.
I know it's cheesy as hell, and
It is.
most of us have heard it a million times, but Mama Ruth says it best. If you can't love yourself, how in the hell you gonna love somebody else?
You
Like,
know,
it's
the
not
crazy
just a
part is
catchy
I
phrase.
said that in the last episode. Hashtag RuPaul Charles, get on the
Mhm.
podcast
Right? Oh my God. Yes, girl.
because we need to talk. Definitely. The last question I always like to touch base on is
Oh
who
God.
in your life
Oh God.
that is from your past that you know is, just not the one, just not going to be a part of your life, just not it. And you have either cut ties with them or not, or whatever. But I mean, if you have it and you say their name now, then it's going to be that you're cutting ties with them now. But who in your life are you ready to just say, girl, bye?
Honestly, nobody.
Nobody.
Because that's how strong my boundaries are now. I don't tolerate any of that tomfoolery or whatever, any of the BS. Like, if
So you've
you
already
don't
told
bring
them
me,
all.
yeah, exactly. Like, they're already gone. Like, girl, bye. Next.
Yeah.
Like, you've done exit left. So no, no, the only people in my life are the people I want to be in my life.
Perfect. And ultimately, that's how we all should be. We want to make sure we bring the most amount of awareness to the queer community. And my biggest goal in this podcast is to bring everybody to talk about themselves, bring out a little bit about, where we are, where we're going, how we grow, and bring our conversation to the forefront and be normal because we are all normal. Where can people find you? As you said earlier, you film a lot of content. I know you do a lot of talking about your journey. So where can people find you? Where can people see your content? All of that.
Yeah. So, yeah, my content's mostly like personal development, mindset, mental health, all that stuff. And I'm very real, vulnerable. I share my personal experience, so y'all have something to connect with. So you can find me so I'm on pretty much all social media, just about. I'm on Facebook as Ethan Woody, Instagram, Ethan Woody 7, and then TikTok, Ethan_Woody.
I will say that if you want to watch content that is raw, that is somebody truly expressing their journey and kind of how they've come along a long way, you can definitely follow Ethan, go to his social media, learn a little bit more about your sober journey. And I am so excited to watch your story and how much of your story has truly made me think about my own life. Um,
Well, with that, I do want to plug in one thing real quick as
yeah,
far as the sober journey. So, the big misconception, and I actually had this conversation with my mother, the big misconception with sobriety is people think that people who are sober had a drinking problem when that's not the case. I didn't have a drinking problem, it just no longer served me. However, I did start to see uh, a pattern started to come into place. Like, I had been thinking about quitting drinking anyways, because again, it wasn't really for me, didn't serve me. But a previous job I had, it was getting very, very stressful. And what I would do is I would come home and unwind with a glass of wine. And then I started seeing a pattern where the last week that I had anything to drink, I went from drinking a glass that it was starting to turn to like 3 bottles of wine in a week. And I caught the pattern. I was like, no, we're going to cut this out before it turns into a problem. So just because someone is sober doesn't mean necessarily that they were an alcoholic or had a drinking problem. They just wanted to cut it out just because they choose not to drink anymore.
That's the thing for all of it is I think, for anybody that you come across that has any type of sobriety, whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, whether it be whatever, it does not necessarily mean that, this person was on drugs, living on the street, and now they became clean. It could just be that, this time in their life they learned like this is not what I want to do, and it's just better to cleanse. And even if you're not trying to go on a sobriety journey, but like you drink every weekend, try a little cleanse. Your body might feel a little better. So definitely take a look at Ethan's content. And Ethan, thank you for joining us today on Girl Bye, where we are so happy to have you. And we hope that in the future, you want to come back, let us know. You can join onto the podcast at any time. If you have any questions, leave your questions in the comments below. Ethan, I'm sure, would love to come back and answer them. He can also answer them on his social media and tag you guys. And so you guys can kind of cross over and see what he's got going on over there. If you feel like you want to talk about your story, reach out to us and we will be more than happy to have you join us on our podcast. And that's on period.
Amen. Here.